coordinate the Open Access 2020 initiative. I am not Raphael Ball, who was supposed to be here this morning, the library director of the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, one of the largest research producing organizations in Europe and probably indeed the world. Raphael was not able to be here today specifically, so the co-presenter, Sven Fund, who will shortly introduce himself, we asked me to step in to do a bit of moderation. And so this session will be a little bit different than what it was planned as. I ask everyone a bit of patience for that, and patience with our being flexible here. What we thought we would do is go ahead and let Sven talk about peer review and some of his solutions around peer review. And he's got a good set of slides, and then we would just open the floor up for questions. I've got some discussion prompts if we like, but hopefully this will be a conversation. So as he presents, please take note of your own thoughts, and at the end, we'll open up the floor. All right? Okay, Sven, over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good morning, everybody, and thanks, Colleen, for stepping in for Raphael. That's really great. I tried to collate in a certain way the slides that we meant to present together. So I'm not trying to lead a library at ETH or something like that and do research evaluation myself, but wanted to give you a rounded view from our perspective, I guess, and then lead into the conversation. So very quickly, how do we see, for the purpose of this presentation, research evaluation today? What could be the change that we could bring to this, and what would be like really the tools, if you want? And I think it has to do a lot with digitization. Many of you who are working in research evaluation know that there has been done a lot of work over the last years already, but I think still, especially when we come to peer review, we will see that that still is a pretty a medieval system, I would say, in some instances, and I want to discuss that a little bit. And then I'm certainly interested also to get into the conversation and the discussion, talk a little bit about the role for libraries that they might have already or that they could expand going forward. Research evaluation, you're all aware of that, I assume. Just as a recap, who are the stakeholders? It is not just, as publishers believe, just about publications, just about publishing, or just about the research community, but also obviously about funders and institutions, and more importantly, about the impact for an industry or different industries and society as a whole. I guess that's what research evaluation should look at, and I think this also gives us a little bit of an idea already where the issues may lie in evaluating this research, especially in the timeframes that are oftentimes given. So right after or still during a research project and as a preparation for a second funding round, for example, of certain activities or other projects. What are the questions research evaluation asks? So obviously impact. First of all, does this piece of research that this group has done, this research has done, have any impact on kind of pushing the specific field, the ecosystem forward? Is it effective and efficient? So do the results really matter, or is it just a dead end that this person is working into? Is funding spent efficiently? I guess an important role, compliance basically in that respect for a lot of research funders, at least in the processes that I was involved into. And what are the opportunities and risks? Thinking about risks, for example, you know that speaking about artificial intelligence in this context when it comes to research is one of the big topics, I would say, right now, but obviously also in other contexts of biomedical research, of nuclear research, and these kinds of things. How, on a very high level, is research evaluation being done today? Looking a little bit at the tools. Obviously, literature review and publication review is and probably the biggest chunk, I would say, to measure certain elements in the research process. Then it's obviously about research awards and prizes that somebody won with their research, participation in conferences, but also obviously, depending on the discipline, artifacts and patents that are coming out of this piece of research, and grant evaluations and reports from other contexts, so obviously not the one that we are evaluating right now, but also beyond that. So do other researchers in research grants refer to this piece of research as relevant, as a relevant basis for what they are working on? There is obviously a lot of issues, as always in our space, when it comes to research evaluation. So first of all, because it's so nice and simple, a certain overemphasis on quantitative metrics, just measuring impact factors, age indices, and these kinds of things. Just looking at it on a very superficial level if you don't dig deeper. Obviously, very helpful tools, but have to be combined with other elements. I put here lack of diversity and inclusivity or inclusion as the second topic, because I think that's something that just in the last few years has gotten a more prominent role than it had before. Really important issue how these factors can be taken into evaluation in the process. Slow adoption still of open science practices. By that I don't mean open access articles, but beyond that, how do we make sure that institutions and research groups really take full advantage of the tools and the methods also stemming from these tools which are out there in their research. Publication bias, I don't want to go any further here, otherwise we have a publisher conversation about publication bias. I don't want to go there, just mention it for you. Then the publish or perish culture that happens in many disciplines. If you see present research on how much the number of publications per research month in certain projects has grown, that's quite significant. I saw numbers about 20% more article output on a research project right now than compared to one which is comparable 5 years ago. So it seems to be a significant pressure there, or felt pressure at least, by researchers. The societal impact, and that obviously depends very much on the piece of work that is being done, is one that tends to be really difficult to be measured, really a complicated field to evaluate, but something that is becoming more and more important, and systems try to kind of capture that increasingly. Then there is more of a consequence, if you want, of research evaluation, which is the career advancement or non-advancement. If you get a research evaluation which is favorable or non-favorable, and certainly ethical concerns. We mentioned them earlier, probably in this whole context of AI, a topic that might come up more in the next years, how plagiarism, conflicts of interest, and other things are really being covered as kind of a focus area of research evaluation. So how can digital help in this? And I said I feel it's a little bit of a medieval structure here and there, where people are using evaluation methods and tools that are not really up to date and that don't really take full advantage of the transparency and the access we can basically get to data beyond just the artifacts and the output. As you can see, I've tried to break this down into 4 different elements, different lines. I want to focus probably on one, because I don't have to read out the slide for you. You can do that yourself, which is really the whole issue of researcher identity, and maybe also a little bit about provenance. I think researcher identity has become, both on the publisher side, also on the institutional side over the last years, a bigger issue. Publishers are trying to make sure that they really can clearly identify researchers in that respect, not tracking identities, but making sure that somebody who claims to be an author is really the author and has the affiliation that is behind this. I think solutions like ResearchGate or others might help in this a lot. It's an interesting approach to see how you can really avoid bad actors in the industry, in the ecosystem, taking advantage of the degree of intransparency, non-transparency, which is still there. And then provenance, I've put a few ideas in here. Again, I don't want to make this an AI or machine learning, which in most cases we are talking about and not so much AI, a machine learning session, but I think we can help a lot there. It's a risk and an opportunity at the same time to bring more transparency to the field, but also technologies like blockchain, which was the big thing. When was that, 4 or 5 years ago? I would say everybody was talking about blockchain. Brigitte, we talked about yesterday. That has kind of slowed down, cooled down a little bit. I think technology like blockchain has great advantages when it comes to tracking certain things and do that in a decentral way and not in a big brother way. So that might be helpful in this context. I think it's important to take away that I think research evaluation and also research or publishing integrity, when we talk to publishers, is not just one thing that you can do, tick a box, kind of launch a system, implement a system, and that's it, but a bundle of measures where the ecosystem has to work together. Right now it seems a little bit that when it comes to research integrity issues, it's often a publisher topic, and the industry as a whole, the ecosystem as a whole feels this is something that publishers have to take care of with peer review, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I think it's a little bit broader than that, and I think institutions have an important role in this as well, and probably are best suited to identify certain malpractices in the process. I want to give you a little bit of my, and I guess that is a researcher's informed perspective on peer review, digging one level deeper. So if you look at the space right now, publishers refer to this as their most important, most valuable piece of value creation, I would say, in the publication process. It is not a distribution issue so much anymore that we are great at, but it's really about peer review. If you see the numbers right now, I think it's a concerning view that we have to have on this. So in a study which is a few years old already, 71% of reviewers decline requests, invitations to peer review at the top of the funnel, if you want, because they feel this is not right for them to review, either because of personal reasons, they don't have time or something like that, but also because they get invited quite untargeted and get a lot of stuff. I don't know how about you, but I'm getting invitations about reviewing articles in inorganic chemistry, and I don't even know what it is. So just from a distance, I think that's really an issue. At the same time, we are working in this field with about 40% of reviewers that have never been trained at what they do. So it's like General Electric or Siemens hiring people that are interested in technology and developing gas turbines after work. This is obviously not very professional, and I think there are different reasons for that. But receiving training and professional standards from reviewers, but also on peer review itself, obviously, is not a precondition to be asked to review and to deliver a review. Journal editors say that the hardest part of their job is not doing running the journal, but really finding reviewers that are willing to deliver on time. And we had a conversation earlier about speed of peer review, which is significantly going down over time. We'll come to that in a minute. If you look at it right now, peer review is unevenly distributed. That is a big problem. 50% of all reviews are performed by 10% of the reviewers. And the more you publish, maybe you have made that experience yourselves already, the more you publish, the more you are being asked to review. Well, if you publish a lot, then you probably have less time to review, I would assume, unless you extend your days into the evenings. But that's a big challenge. On average, 4.73 reviews per year per reviewer are being delivered. That's quite a bit if you think that peer review takes on average about 6 hours of work. Obviously that can vary a lot by discipline. If you look at reviewers, and I hope you can see that, the screens are big, sufficiently big. If you see what reviewers are interested in, what they would like to see changed in their work, it's greater recognition for their peer review work. And I think that's where we come back to research evaluation as well, because research evaluation does, in most cases, not cover the work of peer review of a reviewer. So it is usually not part of this. That goes hand in hand with career incentives for peer review work. So if an institution doesn't know how much their reviewers are, their researchers are reviewing, obviously they can't really implement this in the incentive schemes. They want more peer review training, we covered that already, and issues of diversity and getting a fresher pool, basically, of people is an important topic as well. And you can see that from a publisher's perspective, in about 2 years, between 2020 and 2022, the review acceptance rate went down dramatically further. So obviously, there are people who are pretty unhappy with the system as it functions right now. And that is not because they don't like to do reviewing, that's at least my experience, but because they feel it is not being seen and counted into their results. This picture I found on the internet, I have to admit. And as you can see, it's Humboldt University in Berlin, at least everybody who has been there before. So greetings from Berlin in this context, where I'm based. Peer review and research evaluation are, I guess, increasingly complicated, and probably there are issues in kind of making this more transparent. So peer review within publishing houses is largely siloed within a publisher. Beyond that, it's also siloed between journal groups, journals, and so on. So I can speak from experience whenever I talk to a publisher and ask them about publisher-independent, journal-independent peer review, sharing results on bad actors, on positive actors, on peer review. You see that a lot of people react like, ooh, I don't want to do this because these are my reviewers, and I need to make sure that I retain them because it's difficult enough to get results out of them. These silos obviously create opacity. At the same time, it's very unclear what peer review means across the sector. A good peer review for one journal is something that is completely insufficient for another journal and the other way around. So we don't really have standards in an industry that has been standardized, especially for journals, over the last 20 or 30 years to a pretty high degree. Again, the core value creation element has not been standardized, or minimum standards being implemented at least. And obviously, the major issue is that the work that goes into reviewing is not visible, and the contribution from and to the peer review process, the research process, is not being seen. I want to give you a little bit of an idea what I've been working on over the last years. 1 year. What we did at Reviewer Credits was trying to really identify how we can make peer review better together with the community, being publishers, reviewers, and institutions. And it's really interesting that the idea of journal agnostic review recognition and also review processes is, I think, getting traction. You have probably seen that there are a number of issues around publication activities over the last 2 or 3 years, which are coming to the surface. I think the idea of getting a holistic view on research output and on review activity is on the rise. That also requires, in some cases, to really know your customer. Those of you who are online gamers, I don't know, maybe Daniel, you are an online gamer, I don't know. But those of you who are online gamers have made the experience that you need to, first of all, check your age, otherwise you're not being admitted to a platform. That's a KYC process which is really light. It doesn't mean that somebody knows your whole identity. It is just trying to find out how old and are you in that respect eligible. And I think there are also options to reward. I want to come and close with the role of the library so that we can get into the conversation and discussion. And I think there is quite a bit of activities. When I spoke to research funders, institutions around the world over the last 12 months, I found that except for probably top institutions, it's very unclear where research evaluation in a structured, systematic, and comprehensive way is being located. And I want to make the point for the librarians in the room that this might be really a field to look into deeper. We had a lot of conversations a year ago here in Charleston around OSTP and OSTP compliance, for example. I don't hear so much about it this year. Maybe it's all implemented already and working, I don't know. But my impression was that that a year ago there was a big issue there, where librarians also thought this is probably a mission for us to work on, and something that is being at the same time pushed down by the Dean for Research into the library. And I think if you go around this, there are 8, probably many more fields, but they have to do obviously with data, access to structured analyses around repository open access activity, research data management, but also about advocacy and training of staff, of faculty members in institutions. I've been looking into courses and the institutions in Germany, the universities in Germany, of which there are 800 and something in different flavors. You know better because you work with these guys. But let's say about 800, about 200 of them say that they have a dedicated structure for research evaluation to really train researchers. 600 don't. And I think that is a pretty large number where the library can play a role. I don't know numbers about the US. It will be interesting to find out. But that's the status there. So as takeaways and probably discussion points that you can take me up on here is, obviously research evaluation is pretty complex, and there is a lot of varieties from institution to institution, from country to country. So this is by far not a field of research where I would say it's settled and has standards. Results from publications really play a key role traditionally. I think we are seeing efforts to go broader, but this is where we are coming from. I think digital tools can help, and I hope I've given you a few ideas how digital tools can help to develop a more holistic approach, and especially how we can reduce the difficult time void at the end of the process. So if you assume that publication activity that you're focused on is always like 24, 36 months really behind your latest research, something has to be, somebody has to fund the research in the meantime and the continuation of the work. So I think that's an important element. Obviously, the service that can be delivered here by the community is really developing standards around both peer review but also research evaluation. I would be happy if it would happen in peer review already, because then we could kind of build on that. This review, I think, should be recognized as publisher agnostic, and obviously librarians, I try to show that, and I'm not doing this presentation to tell you what your job is, but want to trigger the conversation. I think libraries should play a key role as players in research evaluation much more than they have done so far, because in my view they are the only information specialists on campus that can take on this job and run with it. That's it already. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Sven. Quite interesting.
Yeah, stay here, yeah.
Yeah, and we do have a couple of mics, so if anyone has a question to begin with, I would be happy to start there, or a comment. Yeah, please introduce yourself and go with your question.
Hi, I'm Holly Nardini. I'm the Associate Director of the Medical Library at Yale University. And I'm curious about one of your solutions there, which is something that I believe is being talked about as segmented peer review. I think one of the reasons that librarians don't feel qualified to assess the science is we're often not scientists. So librarians who are asked to peer review specifically around search quality, methodology, standards, risk of bias, without being asked to comment on the science, are not always what's being looked for. Mm-hmm. And then secondarily, just with number 8, the advocacy, we founded the Librarian Peer Reviewer Database. Mm-hmm. I hope you know of it, LPRD. You have to put library or you're gonna get a reflux medical condition. And that has two portals, a portal for librarians to upload their credentials for peer reviewing, and then a portal for publishers and editors. So segmented peer review, I think, is one aspect of a solution.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I think that's a great point, and really addresses the issue at the top of the funnel, these 71% where researchers say, I'm not qualified to review for this. That can be very senior researchers saying that, and even though they are experts in that specific domain, they might say there is too much tools and methods in this. I'm too far away from it. It would be better to have a more junior colleague getting in, and that's why I guess a lot of peer review work within institutions is being pushed down from the PI to an early career researcher. That's one of the reasons. I agree with you, and there are experiments out there already where publishers try to split up this reviewing, and we are in a number of conversations. I think it's a very interesting opportunity also to better train reviewers early on and make sure they are also being seen in the process. So right now the PI pushes the work down, and in many cases she or he says, let's put my name on it because I've been asked to review and you haven't been asked to review. I don't find that particularly fair, I have to say. And also it is not really a matter of competence there, but just of position in the research process or the research institution. So I think we will see a lot of change there, and that really speaks to my point about this is a little bit medieval in very rigid as a format right now. And I think we need to experiment with these forms of reviewing. My impression is from conversations, for example, with the at the Center of Publishing Ethics at whatever it's called at Charité in Berlin, there is a lot of that in the making already. There is a lot of movement into this direction, and I feel that also more senior researchers don't have an issue in sharing peer review because it doesn't take anything away from you except for work, right? If you basically have 2 or 3 people doing a review together, that's fine as much as it is to publish a paper together. So I think we will see a lot of change there over the next years. Simply also because of the volume of reviews that have to be conducted, and the feeling in researchers that they say, I don't want to review something where I'm not 100% competent. So I guess we will see movement there.
Please, come on down.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Pendell from Portland State University. And I was thinking about the culture around peer review and rewarding the activity. And I think about professional associations on down to promotion and tenure guidelines in departments, and how to potentially get those bodies to start embracing the idea of peer review as something that counts, I guess. And I'm wondering if you have heard of any examples of that in any fields where that's happening.
Yeah, thanks for the question. That's the slide I skipped because I didn't want to go too much into the rewarding side. I think when we speak to researchers, particularly the early career researchers, by the way, the issue of recognition in terms of making this visible as part of your work is about 70 to 80% of what is important to them. They really care about that because they know for their career trajectory, this is an important element. First of all, make it visible. Obviously not necessarily doing open peer review, but just saying Pete has reviewed for Nature, something like that. That's about it, right, in 2023. I think that's the goal. I think on the reward side, I would assume that, we are offering this kind of service, and I think it is really important to recognize that there are different situations in which people review, and there are different kinds of content they review. Book content, for example, has a culture in many markets in the world. In continental Europe, for example, has always been paid for financially. So you would receive $300 to $500 to review a book manuscript because it's a lot of work. in journal publishing, that is regarded to be unethical. I think the ethics argument is very much aligned with publishers' interests, frankly, and in that respect, I would not really want to accept that. But I think rewards in terms of getting something that you can reinvest into your own publishing activity as a reviewer should not be an ethical issue and should be kind of unrisky in that respect. I think we will move into that, and I don't see why rewarding and reviewing are in conflict with each other. Obviously, you also need to reward a negative review, right? If somebody says for these reasons you shouldn't publish the article, that's always kind of part of my assumption. That's a relevant point.
Brigitte Kramp, Vienna University Library. You mentioned now already open peer review, but I was really astonished that you didn't mention it during your talk, because for me, open peer review would not make the reviewer more visible, but would also be a very important, or could also play a very important role in quality assurance of peer review, because you also didn't talk about quality of peer review, and I saw it in the open, how is it called? Open Research Europe platform. I looked a little bit into this open peer review because I was skeptical, but I have to say that it is, you do not see the name of the reviewer, but if you can read the review, you really have immediately an impression if this is a quality review or not.
Yeah, thanks for opening that universe. I completely agree with you that open peer review should be standard in the interest of visibility and in the interest of quality, 100%. Because if you know as a reviewer that your review report will be published, obviously you put more energy, or not obviously, most likely you will put more energy into it. I completely agree with that. I think it's really interesting if you look around across publishers who offers open peer review as an option. It is very, very rare cases. So not only because in my real job I'm working for Wiley, I can say that Wiley, for example, has put with DOIs about 300,000 open peer reviews through the Crossref process. And that's another problem. How do you make open peer review really visible in metadata in the library and researcher community? But there are a number of publishers doing that. I don't see a downside, frankly, from doing open peer review. All numbers I know about the acceptance of the tool by researchers doesn't indicate that less reviewers would review, which obviously would be an argument to not do it, right? But yeah, I completely agree with you. I think it is important, and that's what I meant by standards in peer review. If you have different journals, it's completely unclear to you, I assume, to all of us, how quality assurance has worked. And I don't think that that makes sense in a digital environment anymore. You can grade journals by the intensity of peer review. I would personally be fine in having unreviewed research results, as we all see in repositories. That seems to work in certain contexts as well, in a lot of contexts. But I think really putting quality criteria to peer review is super important, whether it's open or not, but preferably it should be open. And maybe that's also something that another field that libraries can push for and say we want more open science and openness in this field. Not giving you too many ideas for your next negotiations, but just a few.
So, thank you. Any other questions or thoughts? Okay, we are at time, so I would like to thank Sven Fund. You didn't introduce yourself at the start. I would characterize you as an entrepreneur with a mission to enable open in scholarly communication. Is that a good characterization?
Oh my God, that's way too nice. Thank you very much, Colleen.
Anyway, so yes, if you want to add a few words yourself in closing.
I've been working in open access for something like 15 years. I find it really interesting, particularly in open access books with Knowledge Unlatched, which is a little bit what I've been working on the last 6 or 7 years. That's now part of Wiley, so that's what I refer to as my real job. This is a hobby that I'm doing here, which is getting engaged with research integrity, and I call it publishing integrity, because I think research integrity is something slightly different than the issues that we are seeing right now. and yeah, working with a small team in different places, Israel, Germany, the Netherlands, and elsewhere on addressing these issues.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your insights, and thank you everyone for your participation as well.
And thanks for your short-term help here.
Yes.
Thanks.